There we go. Okay, so I'm going to make an argument today that we're studying metaphysics first, right? And so metaphysics is about reality, and we're going to talk about how reality informs our ethics. And that's why we're going to do ethics a bit later. And it's really funny because, not many people study philosophy. Lots of people have ethical opinions, but they don't have a metaphysical foundation. And I'm going to make the argument that metaphysics is fundamental. You've got a duty, a moral obligation to engage with metaphysics because it's our metaphysics that informs ethics. Another way you can think of it, the way things are dictate how we should act. So I'm going to speak specifically about the circumstance from Cypher. Okay, Cypher in the Matrix, he tells us ignorance is bliss, and he chooses to be ignorant, and he chooses to go back into the Matrix rather than know what is true and living sort of in an uncomfortable and living with fortitude and courage. He chooses to go into the Matrix. He betrays his friends in the process. And that's often one thing that we sort of missed, is that he's going back into the Matrix, but he's giving up Morpheus and Neo to the agents. And so he's betraying his friends. So there's the immorality of it from that regard as well, isn't there? Okay? So we'll start with this story here. So this is the Black Mirror episode, Men Against Fire, and there's lots of good episodes in Black Mirror. This is definitely not the best one, but it really draws out the point that I'm trying to make here. So I'm going to try to give a recap of the story. So it follows this fella called Stripe, and it's all Black Mirror episodes are futuristic, and they're about the potential hazards of technology. Okay, that's what they're all about. So it follows this fella called Stripe, and he basically works for the army. He's got a gun in the army, and it's set in a time where there's, I suppose, a simple way to describe it might be there's some sort of disease that has entered humanity. It may be a bit like a zombie apocalypse. Okay, so there's some humans that have got this disease, and when they're contaminated, they sort of act like a bit of a zombie. And these are called, they call them roaches, like cockroaches. Okay, these are the roaches, and they're sort of roaches because they're infesting the nation. And so Stripe's job, along with his team, is to clear out the roaches. All right, so that's their role. Now, so it opens up, and they're about to go into a house and talk to a guy there who's supposed to be sheltering roaches. And so Stripe's sort of moving around the house, and they sort of suspect there might be some roaches here. There's signs of disease and so forth. And he peels back this curtain, and there's these like savage-looking, almost zombies. They got really sharp teeth and pale faces, and they're like howling at him. They're screaming at him. And so he goes bang, he shoots one of them straight away. And then there's another one there, and he gets in sort of a fist fight with him. And then there's a third one who has this it's like maybe like a texter with this light at the end, and it's emitting this sort of screeching sound. And that's like, he can hear it because it's set in the future, they're army soldiers, they've got this neural transplant that helps them eliminate the enemy, helps them sort of have vision, pick up things, a bit like maybe a pair of glasses that you might wear that can help you see clearly and so forth. So he has this neural transplant, and the interference from this thing sort of affects his neural transplant. He can feel it, he can sense it, that there's something not quite right with his transplant. Anyway, he manages to kill all 3 roaches, okay? And he comes out and he's sort of rewarded for it, gets his medal and so forth, and moves on. And then he gets another mission, he gets sort of promoted, he's eliminated some roaches, he's ready for a new mission. And so in this new mission, him and his colleague, his other army person who they're with, there's two more of them. So there's three people in the group, and they have to infiltrate a building, right? And so they're sort of outside. They put their neural implant on, and his isn't quite working. Like they're trying to look at the same thing. They've got a drone footage. They're trying to find the drone footage. So 2 of them can see it, and he can't. He's like, "What's going on? Something's not quite working properly." And then bang! His sergeant gets shot, like headshot, dead. All right, and so him and the other person, they dive for cover, hiding behind this car, and they're like, "All right, we've got to go ahead with the mission. We've got to eliminate the roaches from this building." So they infiltrate the building, and they're sort of running up, and he opens the door, and he can see a couple of civilians. He sees a few civilians there, and so he's like, "All right, so they're not the roaches. You guys need to hide. The roaches are around somewhere." His teammate comes in, bang, bang, starts shooting the civilians. He's like, what are you doing? And he knocks her out. Turns out, okay, this is where the twist comes in. Turns out the neural transplant was making him see civilians as roaches. That this neural transplant, the purpose of this neural transplant was to project or make humans look like zombies, look like creatures that are very dangerous that you need to kill, okay? And so this was used to target a particular group of human beings. All right, you can think about maybe it's like you're targeting someone based on their race or their ethnicity or their background. So this is a really good example of, and the story goes on and so forth, but that's the main point that I want to draw from it, is that it's the way things are. He sees these people as they are, and that informs his response. He's not going to shoot them now because he sees them as human beings. They're not zombies that are infested and trying to kill him. They're human beings who are struggling to survive, who are being hunted by the army. So what do we think about that? Like, if it's does that really draw out the point that the way things are, he sees these people as they are, as humans, that informs his duty and his obligation to them. If they're human beings, he doesn't have a right to go and just shoot them. Yeah? Any thoughts? Comments?
So basically the metaphysics is the base in which you see how things are,
The reality.
and then the reality, and then so the ethics is just the moral
Response to it, or
the moral response.
action that you take. Absolutely. Yep.
Okay.
So, so you think his initial metaphysics is he sees these creatures that are screeching and howling and want to kill him, and so he bang bang shoots them, stabs them. Okay. Then his neural implant stops working, and the reality that he observes is that these are human beings. These are people, and the army's trying to get me to dispose of them. Okay. So like there's a number of ways we can portray that, but I think that story really draws it out. So here's a couple of arguments I might make. Simulation theory we've looked at. If it's a simulation and everyone around you is a simulated being, and they're not conscious, if you could demonstrate that that's true, well then you wouldn't have obligations towards them. It's the way things are that's going to inform how you act. If you're determined, well then you don't have any moral obligations whatsoever because you didn't have a choice in it. All right? Maybe God exists and he wants you to act in a certain way. Okay? If that's the reality, then you have moral obligations. So we're just drawing this point out. It's the way things are that inform how we should act. Okay, so then if we're talking about Cypher says ignorance is bliss, well, the claim I'm trying to draw out here from that in the vein of Socrates and Plato is that ignorance is not bliss, ignorance is immoral. If you choose, if you recognize that you're shooting human beings and choose to ignore that fact, that can lead to immorality, right? It's only truth, the way things are, that allows us to act properly. So we have a duty to pursue truth, a duty to find out what the truth is, because that's going to inform our ethics. Does this argument make sense? Yeah? What do we think about that? Cypher says ignorance is bliss. The claim here is ignorance is immoral. What do you think of that?
That's sort of how the law works.
Yeah? Yeah? What do you mean?
Because basically, if you are ignorant about certain